Welcome to Investors Playbook. This is the April edition, and this is where every real estate investor will come and get exactly what they're looking for from industry-leading professionals. Today, we have one of the most exciting shows that I have ever been a part of as we're kicking off with the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. Mr. Tim Hudak is joining us today. Tim, welcome to Investors Playbook.
Hey, Simeon, thanks for having me back on. Something's looking a little different, though. I like that backdrop behind. That's really snappy.
We did a full-blown rebrand. We had a bunch of we're surrounded by talented people in this industry. So I had M Industries actually work on the Brokers Playbook and Investors Playbook platforms, and they have a brand spanking new look. And I couldn't be more pleased to hear that coming from you, my man.
No, I like it. Very nice and clean. Reminds me of the Brooklyn Nets. A little bit of Brooklyn Nets going on there, which I like. I like that team. I'm a Raptors fan for the Nets, and you're looking good too. I should have known to wear my T-shirt. I could have fit in, but I'm not as buff as you are. But I could have given it a shot. There you go. There go the ratings right there.
There go the ratings down. Tim, thank you for coming on. It's literally my honor and my pleasure to have you on. Your insight is invaluable. I appreciate you making the time. I know how crazy busy the last week has been because we have actually run into each other in a couple of events. Aurea had its annual general meeting. As a broker, I know this because things that happened there impact us. Tell me a little bit about what you've been up to, and we can get into some pretty big news that I want to cover today.
Yeah, you bet. So I'll give you the quick highlights, right? We had our annual general meeting. So we had leaders in real estate from across the province come in for that annual business meeting. I was pretty happy. I'm sure you're this way too. So, I mean, you're just wired. You're a people person. It was good to see people face to face again and not through these little screens, right? So good energy. But as part of that, we had a bit of a cocktail reception for Premier Ford, the housing minister in Ontario, Steve Clark, and Ross Romano. He's the consumer minister. So like the major housing ministers, and Stan Cho, who's in cabinet, and he's a broker, as you may know, that's part of the government. And we had industry leaders there to talk to them, one-on-one. The election's coming up, and we want to make sure that they're making the right decisions. They're well-informed because real estate is so pivotal to our families, to our investments, and to the economy as a whole. And Simeon, I really appreciate that you're one of those leaders that is consistently there, in the Premier's ear. We had the open Q&A. You asked a question as well. So I'll pause at that moment. That was one of the highlights of the week. I just want to make sure, and we'll do this to the other parties as well, that people who are there in government are informed by leaders so they're making the right calls.
And I think that's a great point. It was nice spending, first and foremost, the evening with yourself, but speaking to Premier Ford, speaking to Mr. Romano, to Stan Cho, as you mentioned, is from real estate. He was a broker, and he got into politics because he cared so much to make a difference. So our insight, layered on top of a government already made of people with a background in housing, is so huge. And just to bring a little bit of color, the question that I asked Premier Ford at the cocktail reception was surrounding the relationship of the provincial government with the municipal government of Toronto specifically, meaning that we're going to be covering a new bill that government put forward yesterday. And we'll have your take on it because you were instrumental in creating some of the topics in that bill, advising on the task force. So I think it's important. And Premier Ford looked at me like directly in the eyes and looked at everyone in that room directly in the eyes. That was a very intimate cocktail party, and he said there is no politics involved in creating housing. There can only be solutions. And right now, the mayor's office, save and except a few councillors that are consistently kind of barraging and slowing down the process, is on board. And I think that is huge for the Canada's biggest city's mayor in the province to have that awesome relationship, the working relationship to bring things forward. So I think it was a great event where they took our insight kind of from the street and they're parlaying that and layering it on top of their policy.
Yeah. And so the next day, and thank you for saying that and being part of that once again, Simeon, and I like how you You're not shy. You don't shy away from asking the questions there that need to be asked. So the next day, we actually had a really cool thing happen because Premier Ford and his housing minister and municipal affairs, Steve Clark, came to our AGM. So, as you know, I used to be in the Ontario legislature as an MPP for 21 years and PC party leader. And you can't talk about legislation until you introduce it in the House. So that afternoon, they brought forward new legislation. It's called a Home for Everyone Act, all about bringing more supply, making homeownership more affordable, protecting consumers. And then they sped up the highway across the 401 up to our AGM up by the airport. And they took the stage and I got to MC a Q&A. We took questions from the general public, took questions from the realtors in the audience, and I had a few myself. And I was thinking of you too, Simeon, because when you asked the question about how the city of Toronto and the province can get along to get more homes built and make them affordable, he used the same image. He talked about this carousel that he sees municipal councils where you got a housing proposal, you get on the carousel and you move over and you talk to the planning department. Then next one you talk to transportation, then you talk to heritage, you talk to tourism, you come around, and then you got to go through the whole cycle again with all kinds of changes and how long that takes.
And that's true. And that process just needs to be streamlined.
You got it. You got it. So that's the intent of this bill. I'm glad to go into more details if you like. It was a positive step forward. Now, there's more to be done for sure, but we're happy to see a number of our recommendations and yours incorporated in the legislation.
I think I do want to hear more about the bill, but what I want to do first, because I don't want to forget, and I also maybe will hit this twice. Having you on this show is literally the link to policy and government from a real estate perspective. You are the Ontario Real Estate Association. This is the association that oversees Ontario real estate. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, that's right. We represent the. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, we represent now the over 93,000 realtors in province of Ontario, which makes us the largest provincial professional association anywhere in Canada and fourth largest for realtors in North America. And we do invest a lot of, we're fortunate to get dues from our members in advocacy and in research. So we can be the voice for realtors, the men, the women, the investors they work with every day. Our goal, Simeon, is to help create that next generation of Canadian homeowners. And we've had a lot of progress, and I'm happy to report back. But a lot of things that our research brought forward, our public polling, got into the bill or into a proposal by the Housing Affordability Task Force, which is looking at creating 1.5 million homes in the next 10 years.
And wouldn't that be lovely to see actualized? And what I mean by that, when we talk about those thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of homes that need to be built, those are going to fall into the hands of end users buying their first home, upsizers, downsizers, investors, and tenants. It is housing. We are talking about required and dreamed of housing right now because affordability is out of reach because of the shortage of homes. So the minute we create the opportunity, not only am I going to stabilize the market, meaning having 20% advances in purchase price year over year, not only is it not normal, it's not wanted. Yes, it's nice to make $200,000 a year in equity if you're an investor, but that is a volatile market. And the hell with it is what I say. I don't want, I would never say, no, I don't want $200,000, but not at the expense of the security of the market and the stability of the market. So when you advocate every single day for home affordability, I just want you to know the investors, such as myself and hundreds, actually thousands of our insiders and investors are hoping and praying that what you do sticks and becomes faster, because that's the moment that you create 5,000 more opportunities for us to invest in is going to be the day that the market becomes a little bit more stable.
Yep.
A little bit more stable, finally, to where we see a balanced market where affordability is right across the great province of Ontario in a way that's within reach for everyone and the investor community, of course.
Yeah, you put it very well there. This is proven, right? You talked about how investing in homes is a proven, long-term, reliable investment. It's also probably one of the most critical elements choices we make in our lives, because you can't live in a stock or a bond. So you're getting a good return while you're raising your family, while you can feel comfortable and be yourself. It was a place of safety and security reinforced during COVID. The problem is, and this is hard to believe, but I'll tell the folks on Investors Playbook, we actually built more homes, Simeon, in the 1970s than we did in the 2000s. Like, that was nuts. More people, we got the millennials coming to the marketplace, more immigration, all of that, and fewer homes. So basic economics, when you restrict supply and you got big demand, prices go up. The only solution, build, build, build.
Do you think some of the Band-Aid solutions that we're hearing out there, let's call it the rumor mill, increase this tax, introduce a flip tax, all these little Band-Aids, because that's truly what they are. You're looking to penalize the community, hoping that it's going to do something because your shortcomings in process and being able to bring inventory to the market. That's what I see it as. What is your take on some of these Band-Aids? Do you think some of them could be effective?
Well, I get the politics. I know that business quite well. A lot of frustrated buyers out there, so looking for anything that they feel is going to help them out. So I totally get that. While you might want to, stop foreign buyers from coming into our province, for example. The other side, though, it's kind of lazy on an economics side. The foreign buyers usually are about 4% of the market. They tend to be in the higher end, so I'm not confident this will make a difference, but we'll see and we'll watch closely. But every ounce of energy that is diverted from the core problem, and that's building more homes for, as you said, upsizers, for downsizers, for rentals, right? That's going to be critical to our success. We need to focus on that because it's not easy. Fortunately, the answers are out there. They just take a lot of political courage to get done. And I'd encourage folks at Investors Playbook to go to what's on my wall behind me, Bring Affordability Home, bringaffordabilitytohome.com. You'll see us lay out how to speed up the approvals process, how to help convert existing commercial or government buildings into housing, to intensify along the transit lines, for example, to get rid of 1970s era bylaws will allow more innovative homes like laneway homes, small homes, and to allow for growth so you don't impose a one-size-fits-all downtown Toronto solution on other municipalities to give them more freedom. There's 5 answers right there. It just takes guts to get it done.
So the investor watching right now, they go to bringaffordabilityhome.com. Is there a message there? Is there a way to hit their MP there? What exactly it is they can do practical today, right now?
Thanks. 2 things. Number 1, you can see our solutions. Do you agree with them? Do you not agree with them? But at least you can see our research. And number 2, Simeon, just at a press of a button, you can tell your MPP, get the job done. Here's some good ideas. Let's get moving. My vote, my son's vote, my daughter's vote, my friend's vote will depend on it. We make it easy. If you put in your postal code, we can tell who your MPP is. You can send them a message. And I tell you, this works. A while ago, the province was looking at increasing the land transfer tax, putting it outside of the city of Toronto. And we rallied people from across the province, not only realtors, but consumers across province to say, hey, hold on a second, and it forced the government to back down. It can work. Just do it. Bringaffordabilityhome.com, just say get involved.
Over 1,000 REC insiders participated in that very campaign because I remember it was like yesterday when we were on our brunch with REC, our other show, me and my partner Jazz Run, where we covered what could we do to help your efforts of bringing home affordability in initiating those efforts. We had well over 1,000 people participate, and I hope we get the same result here today.
Love to see it.
Tim, tell me a little bit more about the new bill that a little bit more depth into some of the things that are happening, and then we can just maybe talk a little bit about also the exclusionary zoning, because exclusionary zoning, if we can get rid of exclusionary zoning, I think we can create literally, call it 100,000, 200,000 opportunities inside our city that we can invest in to create more rental supply.
Great, for sure.
We convert old homes into triplexes, fourplexes, etc.
You got it.
I want to learn about your bill, and then I want to go into that specific point of exclusionary zoning.
Perfect. So the legislation is a good step forward. It doesn't include exclusionary zoning, so we think there's a lot more that can be done, but at least it's in the right direction. Here are a couple of examples. It will line up municipal incentives with getting approvals done, because right now you try to get approval done when you're investors, it can take forever. You get the runaround, delay after delay. So municipalities would face a financial penalty if they don't hit certain dates to give you a yes or a no on a project instead of no answer. That's a
And
step
how is the
forward.
financial penalty handled? Is it in the form of a check? Is it put against taxes? How is that? What would that look like?
Well, basically, when you apply for these things, there's a fee that you pay. It's refunded. So if they're
Okay.
not getting back in a certain time, they lose the money. It goes back into your pocket. It's a step forward. We'd like to see it stronger, but it's in the right direction to line up the municipalities' money where its mouth is, so to speak.
That's right.
There's also a new tool called the Community Housing and Infrastructure Tool. You know how Premier Ford, we talked about earlier on, talked about that carousel that goes around and around and around, seeing all these different departments. This basically molds that into one straight ahead vehicle. So you could do all of these things at once. They come together. Municipalities would have to ask for this to happen for a project, but it'd be a much speedier approval, whether that's housing, whether that's a new job creator or a new arena. Both of those we saw as very positive steps forward. And in a second, I can talk about some really good consumer protection in the bill.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So this is the stronger part of the bill is the consumer protection because, well, Simeon, you are a licensed realtor, so you go through education, continuing education. You screw up, you've got a regulator breathing down your back. People can lodge complaints, right? And also, we've moved improvements. We said to the government, and you're the same way as I do. Like if you see somebody, Simeon, breaking the rules, taking advantage of somebody, you want them booted out of the profession. You don't want to slap on the wrist. So
100%.
exactly. So we're successful in getting that. Now they extended that to builders. So if there's a shoddy builder out there who cuts corners, rips off some couple, they can repeal their license. And if that builder made money by breaking the rules, they can take every penny made by that builder back as a form of penalty and fee on them. We like that. The other big area that we've been pushing for, the Premier listened is, and I'm sure you've had clients caught up in this, right? You know, those condo developers that build the project, people buy into the project, and then they delay it and end up canceling the project and leave everybody high and dry. Right? That drives you crazy, right? So they're going to go after those guys as well that are taking advantage of consumers just to earn a quick buck. We really like those aspects.
That literally happened only for the sake of news, etc. in Burlington. I'm not going to name the project itself, but if you pick up any magazine and you put in condo cancellation Burlington, it's going to pop up all over the news. The bottom line is this: people, and I'm going to say this in a general and high level way because it's going to be very true. Any single investor who bought in 2019 or earlier, and their builder and developer has not put a shovel in the ground yet, those projects, I'm telling you now, are 50 to 75% likely to cancel because they took too long to get to construction. Construction costs have literally escalated 30 to 40% in the last 3 years, the majority due to the supply chain. So whether the other half is going to be greed that the market has gone up so much over this time, where they can rightfully, legally cancel as it stands today and resell it at almost double the price. So hearing the fact that our government bodies are taking matters seriously right now to stop, I don't care, you want to stop the guy who had unfortunate events, didn't get to construction, has to cancel because the project no longer makes sense. I get it. But there's not going to be as many that are going to use these circumstances to cancel a project to take the profit. And that is unfair. It is wrong thing to do to the investor community. And I'm pleased to hear that you are working on this for consumer protection and putting the investor first, the mom and pop investor first. I'm not talking about institutional money here.
You got it. Now, spoke with great passion, Simeon. You're right. And the government has listened to us. So we're happy about that. Big check mark there.
That's huge. Tim, I want to thank you so much for all your time with us. I actually think we're well over our allotted time slot. I appreciate the work you do more than you will ever know, and so does every one of my brothers and sisters in the business. But this is my new way of getting your voice directly into the investor's head, into the investor's ears, and into their actual plan. I want the investor to be so empowered that they have such a broad scope, just like the scope you work at, inside their portfolios. They know they can hear from you, and they know that, in fact, all the work that the Ontario Real Estate Association does is actually for the layer down. It's for the consumer that you're elevating our game. It's for the consumer to have better protection that you go to work for every day and making us better.
You said it perfectly. Our number one goal, just like yours, is Simeon and those watching right now, the Investors Playbook, to help get the keys closer to hand for that family that's played by the rules. They've saved up every buck they can, but they can't get in the market. That's what we think about every day when our feet hit the floor. And also to make sure when they deal with a real estate professional or a builder or a condo developer, that they're dealing with somebody who has ethics, who follows the rules, and there's enforcement to make sure that those that don't are out of the business.
I want to thank you again, Tim. Invest in success is the show's motto. Invest in success, invest in yourselves, invest in listening and learning every day. Tim, thank you. We'll talk to you soon, my man. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Have a great day. Thanks for having me back.
Welcome back, everyone, to our second segment of the show. It is Bricks in the Six. And in this segment, we typically really go into some depth and some insight on the housing market, on the new housing market, and really try to deliver value to the everyday investor, to the investor who's looking to make sense out of what to do next. Where is the market today? Where will the market be in a year, 3 years, 5 years? So we try to do a little bit of an educated interpretation of where things are today and how those may impact your decisions into what asset class, into what city, into what market you want to go into. Today, I have the pleasure of having Steve Tabrizi. Steve is a Chief Operating Officer of Remax Hallmark, a firm that literally runs an army of agents in Ontario. 1,800 agents are under the banner of Remax Hallmark. This man knows intimately what is happening in the market as they see the action, they see the deals, they see the demand and the fluctuations literally daily. As Chief Operating Officer, he is going to give us insight into what's happening in the Greater Toronto area, in Ontario in general, and of course, that leads us into a national snapshot as well. Steve Tabrizi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning, Simeon. I'm flattered with your comment. Thank you for inviting me to your show. Look forward to share my insight with your audience.
It is our pleasure and honor to have you. I speak to you often through many different social platforms. I personally value your insight very much. And the reason for that is because I am a practicing broker. I do run a team of 50 very senior agents that are investment focused. So your insight is gold to me because I interpret your insight into my daily practice and into the lives of my agents and our clients. So it's very important for me. Steve, I want you to get started. Give me a snapshot. It's April 2022, where Ontario is pretty much back and open for business. Where do you see things right now? And then we can maybe get into some of the big items that are happening, such as interest rate hikes, etc. Where are things at for you today?
So it's a very interesting question because the government, provincial and federal government, they were both very eager for the final reopening, which they call it back to the normalcy. So we literally, in the last 2 years, we have seen, I divide them into 3 waves. We saw the first wave that the pandemic hit and the market literally halted. And then we saw the second wave, which was the stimulus packages, lowering the interest rate, and people working from home, and the economy not only recovered, the economy literally went to the next phase, and particularly in the housing market, because tremendous amount of saving with the household income, tremendous opportunity in terms of the interest rate going to the market, buying market. And 2021 last year was a phenomenal year, probably a historical year in the Canadian real estate market.
It was.
And we entered the 2022, and the government is now faced this question: how can I stop this train? Because the government is being bombarded by the question of the affordability. If the last election was about jobs, economy, this election, provincial and even the federal, which we just finished, it was all about the housing. So what is really in the month of April and forward is the question is how the Canadian government on a federal and a provincial level can balance this market to a degree that basically address the promise of the affordability. And that's the number one issue that now we are facing.
So I absolutely love where you're going with this, because in March of 2022, we were at 1.25% at the Bank of Canada. And within a year, we were down to 0.25, using, of course, this modern economic policy called quantitative easing. And now we're, of course, seeing the exact polar opposite, where in order to wrangle inflation, slow the train down, we are using the exact opposite measure, which is the increase of interest rates, to kind of bring that whole that whole machine down and in control, and to get it going the other way. Because if we see inflation keep rising and interest rates rising, you have that double whammy, where the consumer has rising borrowing costs and rising lifestyle costs, where now something has to give. So we don't want a collapse. We don't want fear mongering. We don't want nonsense. To the last point you made, what do you think the government will in fact do? And how do you think the consumer, the citizen, our brothers and sisters out there will react?
Yeah, so the government faced one fundamental issue, which was the supply chain for the last 2 years. The supply chain, a lot of people only correlate the inflation only to the real estate market and housing. But the biggest surprise element for the government and a global market, unfortunately, was the conflict in Europe, Russia and Ukraine. That caused that the energy market goes through the roof. Canadian oil sector and energy sector, up to 3 months ago, they were selling the Canadian oil at the cost of $60 to $70 per barrel. Now we are sitting as of today at about $110. In a long term, is a great news for Canada, but in the short term, it has caused to increase the cost of the day-to-day living, because we all know the transportation is the key to the cost of the living. So the Bank of Canada start raising the rate, but face now this surprise element of yes, we had a supply chain issue. Now we have an issue of the carrying and transportation costs. That's really derailed them. So what I see, and now they are basically saying, okay, can I, by increasing more interest rate, to balance the market? Yes, in a very moderate way. This is my opinion. But what can they do to reduce the inflation rate? On the other hand, the good news is Canadian household, they are sitting at almost about $3.6 trillion of the surplus in terms of the saving over the last 2 years. Then you can see
$3.6 trillion.
$3.6 trillion compared to pre-pandemic. That's a surplus in addition of the private sector and a household sector. So the Canadian government got to come up with the policies to encourage the companies that they are sitting on a surplus, consumers that's sitting on a surplus, to reinvest that money back in the market. The good news is the economy, yes, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were all questioning, why are we printing the money, which is called the stimulus package? Who is going to pay this debt? But the reality, let's face it, the federal government did an amazing job. You had two choices. Let the economy crash, have 20% unemployment rate, or no, give a peace of mind to the consumers. Your job is protected, your income is protected. Let's move on the economy. So the federal government right now, the next week is Minister of Finance Freeland got to make some adjustments, some announcement. There are concerns is happening in the market. Are we going to, for investor particularly, are we going to create a flipping tax? Are we going to raise the interest rate? Are we basically going to ban the open bidding? Are we going to have an auction style bidding? But frankly, Simeon, I feel all these measures are a temporary measure. Because if you go back to 2017, when Kathleen Wynne was going out of the door.
The Ontario Fair Housing Plan.
Yeah, it came with the Ontario Housing Plan. What she did, she simply caused a little bit of the bump for a period of the 12 to 14 months. If we were doing 100 transactions a year in Toronto or GTA, we went down to 90. But the prices, which went up by double digit of the 20, 30% on that era, didn't come to the minus. It just came down to 15, 17%. So we are still on a surplus. So my message to the investor is, this is the opportunity time for you, because there will be two segments of the consumers: the buyers that take advantage, the sellers that they are panicking. So this is the opportunity for investment. This is a classic.
So please, Steve, I'm going to stop you because what you're saying, I find to be extremely true. I want you to take a minute and interpret exactly what would you do. So let's give the investor the actual practical advice. How does one act on an opportunity? So first and foremost, are we saying that the market will continue to go up in price?
Absolutely. The market will go up in the price, and one main reason for it. Listen to the federal and provincial policies. Federal announced a rapid increase in immigration. So we are increasing the demand, and we haven't even figured out the supply issue. And the provincial government is coming into the equation and says, hold on a second, I got a problem. That's your problem. I need labor force.
It's funny you mentioned that, because the most amazing gentleman of all time, Mr. Tim Hudak, our CEO at AREA, was just on a second before you came in, Steve, and he really drove home what needs to be done on the supply side. So please go on.
Yeah, so,
this is the best tie-in possible.
Yeah. So some people, I'm a proud Canadian immigrant. The question becomes this, which is a very drastic question. Okay, should we halt the immigration for 2-3 years so we can create the balance? No, we can't, because the Canadian market needs labor force. Unfortunately, we need labor force. The birth ratio in Canada is dropping. So we need to bring specialists. We need to bring skilled workers. We need to bring investors. So even if they start with the renting a property, that means we need housing. The provinces, not only Ontario, they have failed by implementing infrastructure, transportation plan to create a chain of the communities that people can live and commute. So now the federal government is saying, okay, what can I help you provinces to expedite your infrastructure of the housing, that's the issue. It's happening. So how could the prices could come down? No. Policies that is going to be announced by the province and federal is just going to create a momentary confusion in the market. And a confusion going to happen in two ways. You've been around with your amazing big team, and you see on a daily basis consumers. They are asking you this question. Simeon, maybe I should wait. The market is crashing. And you're saying, are you crazy? No, it's not going to crash. Yeah, they will ask. The buyers right now has a one mindset. I wait after the federal provincial election because the market is going to drop by 20%. The sellers are saying, no, I want the price of the last month, Simeon. No, sir, you can't get it now. Maybe you are getting it 5% less. So this is what I call the platform of the opportunity. Buyers should not stay away from the market, because if you are long-term buyer, end user, your plan is clear. You're not flipping, you're not selling. Investor, they only got to pay attention to one thing. Have we resolved the supply and demand issue?
If the answer is no.
If you have not,
the answer is no.
And if the answer no, so the prices maybe now stagger for a little bit, but it will go up.
Steve, we are in a tight time. I have one last question for you, and this is going to take a little bit of polishing your crystal ball. From all the asset classes, income properties under 4 doors, new construction condominiums, resale condominiums, low-rise single detached family homes. If I'm an investor and I am your best client, where are you guiding me in the marketplace?
If you are in the residential sector,
Residential sector, yes.
yeah, multiplex properties and a condominium, because the rent is rising drastically.
I absolutely loved this session. Steve, I want to bring you back as soon as possible. I'm going to have my office try to line up a few dates. You are valued. You are appreciated by the investor community. You are appreciated by me. Thank you for coming on to the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
For everybody in our audience, please tune in online onto the website, investorplaybook.com. You can find us on our YouTube channel. And please take the time to look at all the different resources available to you. Steve can be answering your questions should you have any. Put them in on the website. We will get you any and all answers you're looking for. We'll talk to you soon on segment 3, which is the finance segment. We'll talk to you soon.
Welcome back, everyone. We are going into the finance and mortgage segment. And today we have decided to take a little bit of a different approach, Bobby.
Yes, we have. We're going to flip the script here, and I'm going to be the one to ask you some questions today.
Well, let's go and let's flip that script.
I love it. So something that most people wouldn't know about you, Simeon, is that you spent nearly a decade working in credit and credit repair
All right. I see where
with people. So it's apropos, based on what's happening in the market today, to talk to people about their credit and where it's going to take them as an investor. So can you explain to us how a credit report works?
It is but proper to know how credit works, and I think it is one of the biggest issues in modern society, the fact that financial literacy is not taught in school the way it should be. So I do appreciate that you bringing this up today, and this was a session that you wanted to do off the cuff. I did not know where you were going to go with this, so I like it a lot. A credit report. So I'm going to start right off the basics. So there's 2 major credit reporting houses in this country, in Canada, and that's TransUnion and Equifax. Both are used by the biggest lending institutions. Their processes and their algorithms are absolutely phenomenal in predicting the likelihood of default. So this all started with obviously organized credit, organized banking, organized real estate being what they are. How do you manage mass populations and their ability to borrow? And what is the likelihood of them not paying and or paying? That's the fundamental purpose of a credit report. This credit report will be used as early as 16 to 18 years old for most. And that's when when someone applies for their first credit card, when they want to get a video store subscription. I know that doesn't exist anymore and it's all Netflix, but even getting an account at a VHS or video store back in the day required credit. When you apply to get your first rental in university, you're going to have your credit pulled. And the reason your landlord wants to see your credit is what is the likelihood that you're going to default on your rent?
Exactly.
How does a credit report work? The first section is all your vital statistics. Your name, potentially your SIN number, your date of birth, all the ways to be verified. Your employment information is typically on there, although not always, but as you grow your profile over time, it gets more and more complete. And as you grow into your credit report per se, your score will be going up or down depending on your very actions. Having a strong credit report is so crucial, and we're going to get into that. But what is the information on the financials that it contains?
Exactly.
So there's 3 major components to a credit report. There is, and a lot of you have heard of the R rating, R1, R9, write-off, many different words for it. R stands for revolving. So when you get yourself a visa, the limit is, let's call it $5,000. And that is revolving credit because you have the ability to pay it off and reuse it. So it's a revolving line of credit, a revolving financial instrument. The second is the institutional rating, which begins with an I for institution. That is a loan. So when you get a loan for $5,000, you get it today, it's $5,000, and as you make your incremental payments down the line, the balance goes down. But you cannot reuse the loan. So it is a loan, it has a start date and an end date. And that period that you're making your payments is what is tracked. The institutional loan and the revolving loan are looked upon from two different sets of eyes. So if I meet you, Bobby, and you have 4 lines of credit of $5,000 that are revolving versus Nicholas having a loan of $20,000 where you cannot borrow against it again, who would you rather lend money to? The guy who can use the money anytime, pay it off anytime, and use it again anytime and be at that high credit limit? Or would you rather lend it to Nick, where it was 20,000, he's down to 12, and he's making his payments, and he does not have the ability to go back up to 20 while having your money on the side?
Which is exactly where, so you're about to embark upon it, I don't mean to interrupt you, but is there a better type of credit then for an investor?
Of course there is. And we can tie this into investment very easily. The overall lesson out of here is to either eliminate or have as little revolving debt as possible. Revolving debt is the enemy of the credit report. Institutional and mortgage debt are the best part of a credit report. And everything in between is where all people lie depending on their consumer needs. So in order, for example, to prepare yourself in getting a mortgage, what does one need to do? Well, it depends on what part of your life you are in, meaning are you established, are you new, are you older, what exactly is happening, and you're going to prepare differently. But I'm going to maybe cover off today for our youngest brothers and sisters out there, and maybe the first-time investor as well. So to cover off to the first-time home buyer. To the first-time home buyer, you need to have your deposit aligned. Once you have your deposit aligned, you need to take a look at your credibility, which is your credit score. There is not a single more important factor in when the bank is trying to determine your interest rate. And with interest rates going up right now, this is of major concern to thousands of people looking to enter the housing market.
So how does that rising interest rate then tie into your ability to find new credit?
So there's a direct correlation, meaning that you're going to have to qualify at a higher rate, so you're going to have less availability to get other things. So your actual loan to value, meaning the value being you being the product that they want to lend towards. So if you are saying, I want to buy $1 million home, well, if it's at 3%, the payment is X. If it's at 1%, that it was, the payment is Y. So what you could have afforded in home 6 months ago to what you can afford today are two different things, because that interest rate does play a factor. And in the same way, if you have less than perfect credit, you don't qualify for that 1% mortgage that people think they can just get. Mm-hmm. You don't. So is there a correlation between interest rates in your credit report? There couldn't be a bigger correlation. On the same token, interest rates rising doesn't mean your credit's being hurt, because that's also a very common misconception. They're two separate things. The tie-in being that your direct ability to borrow is tied to your credit reputation, the credit report.
So back to our first-time home buyers then. Everybody's working to maximize what their credit score looks like on paper. They've aligned their deposits. Where do they go?
Always try to be 6 months to a year before. So be prepared. If you got into a relationship, or if you feel that you're ready to get into home ownership, where you're combining income, or you got a stronger income and you're ready to go because you have savings, 6 months to a year before, you should pull a copy of your own credit report. Take a look at where you're at with your credit score. Most banks now include that as a value-add service to their clients. So I personally deal with one of the big red ones, and when I log into my profile, it says my score next to it, and I can see my credit report, I can see my score and everything else. 6 months to a year before, take a look at your credit report. If you have 5, 6, 7 credit cards, the answer is call them, cancel them, and pay them off. If you're not able or liquid enough to pay them off, get what's called a consolidation loan. Keep one credit card, just that you need for travel and for everything else to be able to book things. Keep one credit card, $3,000, $5,000, whatever the case may be, whatever you need to be able to accommodate your lifestyle. But above and beyond that, shut them all down and do so by paying them out using a consolidation loan. And that is the difference when I was talking earlier about the R value versus the I value. The bank will see that you're excellent at repaying your monthly installment, which means you're going to be excellent at paying their monthly installment on your mortgage. So my biggest advice would be to close down revolving credit, open institutional credit if you need to, in order to get that mortgage credit, that M, with ones across it for years to come.
Now, while I haven't been there in what seems like forever, that's more about credit than I learned in high school, for sure.
That's because you're old, Bobby.
Simo, thanks so much for having me on to ask you some questions today.
I truly appreciate you being here. And to our listeners, we're going to be heading into the last segment of the show, which is the Q&A. So tons of your questions are coming up ahead. We'll see you in just a second. Welcome back to the show. This is going to be the last segment for today's show, and it is the Q&A. I am joined by my main man, Bobby Pume, and we'll be covering off some of the topics that we really went into today, especially surrounding investment, inflation, how to best hedge around it. Bobby, what is the number one question asked on the show?
Yeah, we love to take in your questions, so keep them coming. Everything to investorsplaybook.com. Get in touch with us, ask these questions, because this is exactly what we want to be able to help you with. First question, Simeon. How do I protect myself against inflation?
Again, we've covered off so much about inflation today, and we brought on the best people to speak to it. Protecting yourself against inflation, the number one way to do so is by investing in a hard asset. That means whether you choose gold, silver, or something that's a little bit easier to leverage, meaning being able to borrow against and buy, is housing. So as we are massive proponents of investment in real estate, the number one way to hedge against inflation in your portfolio is by tying yourself to the market itself, and that's done through real estate. So getting into the property ladder and getting started.
So run me through the property ladder then, Simeon. What is the next best investment for me?
Only you can answer that question. And I'm going to hit you with a couple of general notes. If you do not own property, you need to get into a property. So the first thing that you can do, the best thing you can do, is speak to your financial advisor, speak to your mortgage professional. If you don't have one, we have some of the greatest professionals in the country on the platform. Go to investorplaybook.com and find those mortgage specialists, those bankers, those finance experts that can help guide you through the pre-qualification process, where we can get you into a property at the earliest available opportunity. So the best investment for you is investing in yourself and getting ready to get into the market. If you are already in the market, you need either to dig yourself further in by growing your portfolio or paying off your mortgage if you believe that that's a good idea, not to say that it is. Because having a mortgage and being able to leverage cheap debt to expand can also be a great idea. But depending on your train of thought, depending on your goals, there's many things we can do to keep moving.
So you and I are sitting right now in the GTA, in our Mississauga office specifically. And one of the biggest questions that we get, especially in the GTA, is how do I know which condo project is right for me?
Yeah, so I mean, if you like the condominium investing route, and that's a very, very, very popular type of investment because it's easy to get into. To pick the right project, you have to ask yourself just a couple of questions. Do you like to invest close to home? So do you want to live close to the investment unit or rental unit you're going to own? If you don't care about that kind of location, like the proximity factor, you want to just make sure the fundamentals of the project are strong. The builder is experienced and well capitalized. The location is close to transit. The location is close to an employment node, meaning the industrial areas or a university or Square One, for example, in Mississauga, Yorkdale in Toronto, Eaton Centre downtown, where there's a financial district, a service district. So make sure you're well positioned in order to always have your unit occupied by the greatest and best tenant that you're targeting.
So what you're telling me then is it isn't just location, 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 but it is people, people, people as well.
They're tied at the hip, and it's fantastic.
Last but not least here, we get this question a lot. People want to know, how do I grow my portfolio?
Growing your portfolio, the number one way to grow your portfolio is by reevaluating it. So let's say you bought a property 5 years ago for $500,000. We have to go back and take a look at that property because the mortgage on it has gone down, if any. The market has gone up, if so. And what is this property worth today? If today it's worth $550,000 or $750,000, you're going to be able to take that appraisal, take it to your bank, and be able to refinance from the point of your mortgage of where it is today to whatever loan-to-value ratio you qualify for based on your income, your experience, and a myriad of other things. But the best way to grow your portfolio is by reassessing the values across your current properties, refinancing them, and taking those funds and putting them into a new property inside your portfolio, again, at the earliest you possibly can.
Which is exactly what we're here to try to do on the show in general. It's to provide people with a greater understanding of what they have the ability to do. Whether it's then understanding your portfolio from front to back, whether it's getting started net new with new information that you didn't necessarily have before. I think that we can go to investorsplaybook.com and find a lot of these things.
I think we have a great set of resources on the website. If anybody is wondering where to get started, you can get started by booking an appointment to see one of the professionals that we work with. And I mean from brokers to lawyers to accountants to realtors, every single professional that you need to build your power team can be found in our resources and strategic partners on the site.
They are all part of the Investors Playbook community.
They certainly are. And I think that's going to bring our Q&A to a close today. We do got to keep it tight for our all media partners. They tell us we like the sound of our own voice a little too much. I want to thank you for joining us on the show. We appreciate you. If you're watching us on YouTube, please take a moment to subscribe. If you're listening to us on any of your podcasting platforms, take a second, give us some feedback whenever you can. We look forward to speaking to you and seeing you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.